One question I get a lot running a software development agency from our customers or potential customers is, can I pay with equity? And this is a great one because generally speaking, equity is a great form for aligning interests. Equity kind of brings the interests of both parties together. And what they ask is basically build me an MVP and I'll give you 20, 30, 50, whatever percentage, like a large percentage of their venture, and entering this collaboration as almost equal partners, or us as SoftUp having a great stake in the venture. And that for us, sometimes there's cases where we're interested and we can take that discussion further. But in most of the cases, we get these requests for founders who are first-time entrepreneurs or solopreneurs who still kind of figuring it out. And there's three things with that. Generally, again, as I said, I'm all for including some form of equity in the compensation. I think that does great that works out great in the long term, especially on forcing the agency or forcing the development counterpart to be outcome bound on the project. But there's three issues with that, and one of them is, and this is what most founders don't realize, is that equity is the most expensive form of financing. So if you give up, let's say 20 or 30% to build an MVP because you don't have any money today, let's say your venture is worth it's like a 10 million, then you paid $2 to $3 million dollars or euros for an MVP, which is crazy, right? Or let's say it's a unicorn, then you paid like $300 million for an MVP. So it's not really realistic, right? It really shows that there's something about the arrangement that just doesn't really make sense, neither for the founder side, first of all, but also for the agency itself. Secondly, the founder, actually this is in general, there's many ways to evaluate a startup. So there's many valuation models out there. I'm not going to go into depth, but a founder might have a different idea of how he evaluates his company. And when it's pre-revenue, there can be a lot of speculation. It's very speculative, and it's difficult sometimes to arrive into a decision, especially when we talk about large chunk of equity. If we're talking about you do all work, no payment, the only payment is equity, right? This is kind of a high risk, high reward scenario. And the agency would have to do a lot of research on the project, on you as a founder, and pretty much be kind of a VC in the early stage, not with money, but at least with their time and with their knowledge. So that's the second one. And that can lead again to, let's say, disagreements, or it might lead to situations where you don't find the common ground or common language. And the third point on that is equity only compensation almost never works out for most agencies because they need to be liquid, right? They have overhead costs, they have payroll, they have offices, they have all of these fixed expenses that they need to keep running, both in the short term, also in the long term. So even though you might think of that as a possible scenario, it would have to be some sort of a combined time and material or fixed project with equity that can make it work for both the client and the agency. And this is a big misperception that equity doesn't work. I'm personally a fan of it, and I think it can work, but you need to take into consideration the nuances that I mentioned, and you cannot just go in full equity without any form of liquid payments, especially at the beginning of the relationship.